I'm Beaver Felton for SuperChops for Bass, and hopefully I'm going to provide you guys with a real workout today. Okay, we're going to be covering a lot of different things. Techniques we're going to deal with are fingerstyle. We're going to do some two-handed tapping, some slapping, some harmonics, a bunch of harmonic things, and some chords. A couple of different chordal approaches to playing stuff like that on bass, arpeggios, etc. Now, we're also going to look at practice habits, which I think are crucial to your development as a player. I'm going to try and cover some fretboard familiarization type stuff that might help you out. By the way, let me insert, this video is definitely geared towards intermediate to advanced players. Maybe some beginners could get something out of, if you're real ambitious, I guess, or a real quick learner, I don't know. But we're also going to deal with practicing in the car, which is pretty cool. And we're going to look at a little bit of theory. In other words, I'm going to try and interject as much theory during the course of the video as I can, both harmonic, melodic, and rhythmic theory. I'll just point out things like if I'm doing a pattern out of a mode, or if I'm doing a 16th note triplet or whatever, I'll try and point those things out. Let me see. Let's start out by me walking through the equipment. There's a Carvin LB80 bass, top of the line unit. Everything's pretty. These are optional things, but it's not like a custom bass. Everything I've got on here is things you can order right out of the catalog or whatever. The deal here is, when it comes to my choice of basses, it's got to sound good, it's got to play good, and it's got to be responsive to all the different techniques I do. And this bass does all the above. Now, I've also recently acquired a couple of 5-strings that I like a lot. This is a fretless, and that's fretted. These are also dynamite instruments. Okay, Kaler. I'm using this. You probably saw me use it in the couple of times in the opening solo. I'll also use it during the course of the video. I think it's a great tool for expression for bass, and most importantly is you can use it, and it always comes back to tune. Time for an edit. Okay, also they make a fixed bridge, which is real cool for those of you that you know, we're not really into the wang thing, but you just need a real strong bridge. Okay, strings, GHS, light gauge, 4200. If I use a high C, I'll use like a 25 or a 30. If I use a low B, a 125 or a 130. I use boomers, sub-zero boomers, sometimes super steels. And the deal here is they sound great, they last a long time, and they're very consistently fresh right out of the package. I like them a lot. Okay, as we head down in this direction, you'll see I'm using the hip shot, which I used in the opening solo, you probably noticed. And it obviously drops your E string down to a lower note. I go down to a D. You can go as low as a C. Everybody uses these. John Aldretti, Billy Sheehan, Kenny Aronson, Will Lee, Kip Winger. Everybody uses them. It's a dynamite effect. Now, let me say parenthetically, you can use these on a 5 or 6 string bass, which I do over there. Dropping the B string down to an A, which is real cool. I think Chris Squire tunes his down to an A. So, okay, there's a Kleenex. Now, a lot of guitar players use these, like Angelo, who was in the opening solo. And what it does, basically, it's a string mute. Now, I just recently pulled the pad off a few minutes ago, so I can't show you that. But it's good for the two-handed tapping. It kind of gets rid of USN, which is, of course, unwanted string noise. Now, once again, I've seen a lot of guitar players use them. Adrian Davison is a bass player that comes to mind that is using these, I think. I've seen a picture of him with one of these mounted on his Rickenbackers, and he's one of the best tappers in the world, guy out of Canada. If you're into that technique, check him out. Okay, let's see, replacement pickups. As we slide over here, the white PV Foundation, that has, these are Seymour Duncans. That has a PJ active setup. It's got white onboard EQ switches, you can see right on the pickup. On the Klickenbacker bass, that's a humbucker style. It's a passive pickup. It's called a quarter pounder, or quarter pound. Quarter pounders from McDonald's, I guess. Anyway, and the deal is it's got like a higher punch, more output. It's got more gain than the standard pickup. That's a humbucker style. And on some of my other basses, I also use like the P and J quarter pound pickups. Okay, let's see. As we head over here towards my rack, you'll see I'm using a Carvin preamp. It's got full EQ capabilities, built-in compressor, noise gate, and crossover. I'm also using the Carvin 900 watt amp, super loud, pushes a lot of speaker cabinets because it goes down to like 2 ohms. And very quiet, totally reliable. My choice of effects are quite obviously ART. Now the only thing I'm actually going to be using today as far as effects is the SGE Mach 2, which let me just say from one bass player to another that these things are definitely applicable to bass guitar. It's got a lot of great effects in it. And I'm sure you noticed that I was using some effects in the opening solo that were right out of that. And during the course of the video, I'll use some different ones that kind of complement or enhance some of the different techniques and patterns I'm doing. So this is real cool. They're coming out with a new effect for bass. Probably by the time you see this, it'll be out. It's called the Night Bass, which is really dynamite. Basically, it's a bass preamp coupled together with all the effects of the SGE, so that ought to be really happening. Two bass players that come to mind that use these also. Victor Wooten, who you've started reading about, and Keith Horn, who's playing with Victor's brother in a fusion group called 50/50. Both these guys are great. Once again, they're using the SGE also. Okay, let's see, what else? Speaker setup. This is kind of a four-way system. I don't know if you can see it. Also carbon. Upper stuff, 410s and a tweeter. And let me just put in here that I had one of these ripped off a couple of months ago when I was here in Orlando, so if any of you guys know where a cabinet that looks just like that and it's a bit hot to the touch, give me a call because I'd like to get it back. A 15 in the middle and an 18 for the low stuff if you have like a hip shot and or a low B, like 5 or 6 string bass. What else? Okay, ultra case. Okay, this is a cool stand. It folds down to almost nothing. Zip, it's out of here, folds up to what you see. This is a 6-bass unit. These are on tour with U2, Motley Crue, Van Halen, NXS, AC/DC, et cetera, et cetera. And even though it's pretty expensive compared to like the little tubular guys, they're totally oblivious to drunk dancers, clumsy roadies, and scud missiles like that. Okay, one other thing that I use, Beaver. What is that glove? Well, let me tell you about it. It comes with a lubricant, stuff here. Basically, it's like, well, I can't mention the other brand names, but it's a lubricant. And, or that is. And the glove, it looks cool, feels good and all that, but you put the lubricant right in here. Whenever you need it, you just squeeze it like that, and you've got instant slickosity. Okay, which brings me to my choice of guitar players, who is Angelo Giannotti. And you might do something, Angelo. No. And by the way, Angelo happens to be using Kaler as well as the Kleenex, and also, this is pretty nifty. I haven't seen anybody use one of these, but in the opening solo, you probably noticed that we both had dropped the E string down to a D. He's using obviously a hip shot for guitar, same function. And then droned off of that while we did a melody over the top of it. And you probably noticed him from the first Hot Licks video I did a couple of years ago. Angelo Giannotti, my favorite guitar player. Okay, having said all that, let me talk about practice for a few minutes, then we'll tune up and we'll get into the lesson. And also I got another guest star coming up later, Wally Voss, who played bass with Yngwie, Tony McAlpine, and Joey Tafoya, or however it's pronounced. Who knows, might have anybody pop in. Practice. You got to practice. You got to practice regularly. There's nothing like a daily routine. You need to practice with a metronomic device. Even though my drum machine is nowhere near it at the moment, it will be in one swift edit. And I'll be using that during the whole video for patterns and or some exercise things. So I'm going to show you how to use that. That's a real good way to document as your technique develops. You write down the pattern or the exercise that you're doing, how fast you can do it, of course the date. You want to do it accurately, and then how long you can do it. So what that really shows is strength, speed, endurance, and accuracy, precision. All these are different aspects of technique. And over a given amount of time, depending on how you practice, you'll see as your technique develops. Now, I want to also plug drum machines. You ought to really get one of these. It's your best friend. It's a lot more fun to practice with than a simple click or just a hi-hat. B, you can set up all kind of different feels, different time signatures, which kind of makes you more versatile as a player, and to me that's a form of improvement. And also it's real good in that you can compose with it. For example, the opening jam. Obviously I had some idea of what we were going to be doing, and so I programmed that feel that I had in my head, with the drum machine. So the bottom line being that for a part of a song or an entire song, you can use that, so it's good for compositional type aid. Okay, now let's take it to the car, and I'm going to show you how I practice 2 or 3 different aspects of technique in the car. Hey, okay, one way to practice in your car, obviously, is take your bass, get in the car, and then... But not the safest thing or most advisable. So for now, let's ditch the bass. Okay, there's three things that I basically practice, and this is in all seriousness. First thing I practice is finger strength, and what I do, as you'll see, is finger pull-ups. Let's go in this direction over here. I just let the weight of my arm rest, and I actually do single finger pull-ups. You do it for like a minute, maybe 2 minutes at a time, each finger. I'm going to abbreviate it, obviously, and it really builds your strength, which is real important in bass play. And I also do it with my thumb, and I even do it with my left hand. However, never with both hands at the same time. That'd be catastrophic. Now, another thing, for fingerstyle playing, what I've done, okay, I'm going to show you there's a, well, it looks like this, but that looks kind of weird for now. So you'll see there's a ridge around the upholstery of most cars. Steve Bailey does the same thing. I've been doing it for a million years also. And it's about the same resistance and thickness as a bass string. So what you do is turn on some music. You might or might not be able to hear this. Well, use that kind of like a metronome. In other words, you pick up the, would y'all cool it out there? Pick up the beat from the music. Anyway, and practice like single, double, 3, or even 4 finger exercises. Do each one. You know, you can do quarter notes, eighth notes, sixteenths, triplets, etc., etc. And the point is, do each one for like a minute, maybe even 2 minutes at a time, just really pulling. It's real good for endurance and building your stamina, and speed to some degree also. Now, the last technique that I practice when I'm in the car is the thump technique. Okay, figure it out. If you're thumping bass like this, you're using basically, for all intents and purposes, the same group of muscles, tendons, joints, ligaments, as if you're in this position. Of course, you got to watch where you're going. But thump against the steering wheel. Thump hard. It's good for your strength. Once again, use different rhythmic configurations against whatever music you're playing or listening to. You know, slow, fast, or in between, which would be half-assed, I guess you'd call it. Anyway, and so that's real good for building, once again, endurance and speed and strength. Now, do a reverse motion like this. Billy Sheehan would point it out as being a recovery movement, where you're actually doing the reverse. You're hooking your thumb under there. That builds up the strength for that movement. Now, ultimately, where that's going to benefit you is when we get to the double thumping, which Victor Wooten, who I mentioned earlier, is just astonishing at. And for those of you guys that don't know what I'm talking about, you will in about 30 minutes, but here's an introduction. Double thumping is where you're actually thumping down through the string and then also producing a second note with the upstroke. You're using your thumb just like a pick. So the bottom line here is you're doing the same exact thing on the steering wheel as you will be on your string. So it's a real good strengthening exercise. Okay, let me conclude this by saying, first and foremost, you got to pay close attention, how you doing, to what's going on around you. You don't want to get in a wreck, trust me. So only do it if the car is out of motion, you're standing still at a red light, you're in the Wendy's drive-thru, getting express pack or whatever, waiting on your girlfriend, they're always late. Anyway, so first and foremost, pay attention to what's going on around you. Driver safety first. This is only if you can do it without it distracting from your attention to what's going on around you. All right, let's go back in the studio. All right, let's start out by tuning up. I'm going to give you just the harmonics and the open string. Here's your G. Harmonics. D. E. Okay, the first thing we're going to do is a finger section. Now, the first thing I want to show you is like, hopefully this won't be too basic for you guys, a 2-octave major scale. Here's the reason I do this. When I take on a student, I'm just trying to get an idea of, where he's at and what he knows about his fretboard, etc., etc. And I'm constantly astonished by how many guys I'll say, okay, can you do a 2-octave major scale? And if so, do it, slow or whatever. And I'll see something to the effect of, all this curly shuffle or whatever. I'm going to show you a real easy way to do it. It's a great exercise. It's real good for getting to know your neck, because after you do it in G, we're going to continue on. I'm just going to show you one other key, and you need to do that in all 12 positions. Okay, it's the economy of motion, the epitome of it, really, and everybody's talking about economy of motion and sweep picking, et cetera, et cetera. So this is how to do a 2-octave major scale with 1 shift. It's real simple. It's what I call a stretch fingering. Check it out. Okay, as you can see, for the first 3, second 3 notes, then then that sets you up for the second octave. There's only 1 shift. Okay, if you have a problem with this shift, because you don't need to be doing the pinky shuffle up and down, you need to be going pinky to first finger, just in 1 motion, which sets you up, obviously, for this. Okay, now, be able to do it, be able to do it in any key. Okay, now after a while you see it as a shape. Now let's elongate that whole thing. Let's expand upon that. Let's go back to the key of G, and now we're going to go and hit every note as low as the bass will go and as high as it'll go. Of course, that's going to vary somewhat with what type neck you have. Like the old Fender will only go up to an E flat. Obviously, this goes up to a high G. But the point is this. Hit the lowest note. Obviously, in the key of G, you do have an E and an F sharp. That brings you up to the root note. Go ahead and do the 2-octave thing. Okay, now get ready for the next shift. Next shift. Now, experiment and go ahead and expand on that and be able to do all that in all 12 keys, all the way up and down the neck. Now, if you even want to expand further, just then I did all the shifts on the G string. Now do the same thing. Just for time's sake, I just went up to the octave there. But go up and shift on different strings. Okay, now that we've done that, let's do a lick. Now, I'm going to show you, this is what I consider to be a very linear type passage. It's more of a Stanley Clark type thing. Okay, you'll see what's going on. I'll show it to you, then I'll dissect it, show you the pattern, the harmonics. There's some chords going on. I think you'll dig it. Once again, this is very linear in that it's kind of like short, small intervals, and just kind of goes up and goes back down. Okay, what's happening here is, first let's point out or establish that this is out of the key of E Dorian. Okay, I'm not going to have time for all 7 church modes, but I'm going to deal with at least 4 or 5 of them during the course of the video. Dorian is the 2nd church mode. It's a minor type scale, and it has a major 6 as opposed to a minor 6. Here it is: root, 2nd, minor 3rd, 4th, 5th, major 6, minor 7th. Now, there's going to be a couple of violations during the course of the video of the pattern. But as you can see, these double stops, once again, definition, theory. A double stop is a 2-note chord on bass. It can be in a number of intervals, but in this case, it's a 5 chord. 5 chord consists of a root and a 5th. If you want to dissect all those notes, you'll see they come right out of D Dorian, or E Dorian rather. Now, here's where we violate it. We can go down here. That's a major 3rd, so we'll just forget about that for now. But now here's where the linear passage comes in. And we're obviously doing vibrato, which adds a little bit of character or flavor to the pattern. Check it out. As opposed to... Okay, now, you can see the frets I'm using. And the vibrato is between 11 and 12. Now here's something. Not most people, unless you practice it, of course this movement comes more naturally for some people than others. But anyway, the point is you can actually practice this. I consider it to be a wrist vibrato. I'm using my elbow kind of like a pivot point. I'm even taking the thumb off the back of the neck. Check it out. And you can actually practice it in time. For example, do it with each finger on each string. And it really helps get that development or the development of that. Now, I was just using a short vibrato, close. However, you can do a more radical, you know, obviously spreading it out over like 2 or 3 frets. Anyway, so that brings us to the last part of the pattern. Second vibrato was obviously between 7 and 8, and then, okay, that's a 2-note harmonic chord, 5 and 5. Okay, let me go on and interject some rhythmic theory here. Check it out. Okay, I'll try and get through this real quick. Anticipated notes. A lot of people, you know, I've played with that have been playing for quite a while have no idea when you say it's an 8th note anticipation. Well, if you're one of those people, you're getting ready to be educated. Let's slow this down. Say these are quarter notes. 1, 2, 3, 4. 8th notes would be and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So an anticipation is kind of like the word describes. It's something before the fact. Or Heinz ketchup or whatever the deal is, I don't know. Anyway, what I'm doing is the harmonics are an anticipation or an anticipated 8th note. That's where they fall rhythmically. If it were on beat, it would be on 4. Watch. 4. Now I'm doing it on the anticipated 8th, so it's on the and of 3. Check it out. 3, 4. Okay, so much for rhythmic theory. Now let's go to a different type pattern. This is a much different approach. This is more of an arpeggiated or triadic type pattern, meaning that, well, first let me show you some triads, or arpeggios rather. An arpeggio, for those of you that don't know, is any chord played 1 note at a time. In other words, that's an A chord, that's an A arpeggio. Okay, dominant 7th chord. Here's the construction, or arpeggio. Root, major 3rd, 5th, minor 7th. That kind of sound. Okay, now let's use a slightly different fingering. This is going to fall into place in a minute. This is a minor 7th arpeggio. Root, minor 3rd, 5th, minor 7th. Okay, now that brings me to this triadic type pattern that involves larger intervals like that, as opposed to like the Stanley Clarke thing we did that was kind of linear. Let's see, where are we at? Remember, no matter where you go, man, you saw the movie. That's where you are. Okay, and it's going to be phrased in triplets. Also, I'm going to use a couple of more modes, and I'll point that out after I've done it. Okay, what's going on there is first we're operating out of G Dorian. I don't need to spell that out for you again because we already did it. Or the Dorian construction at least. Okay, then the pattern, we're falling into a different, this is the Mixolydian of the church modes. It's the 5th church mode, and it's a major type exactly like Ionian, which is pure major except you've got a minor or flatted 7th. Check it out. Root, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, minor 7th. Okay, I did it in triplet, but let me show you like the first 4 notes. Now, if you look at that shape, you'll see a perfect G dominant 7th arpeggio. Now, the next 3 notes are very linear. Then the next 4 are, voila, back down to the, this is kind of like a reverse A minor 7th arpeggio. There's the root, minor 3rd, 5th, minor 7th. And then to fill out the pattern, triplet, which is a 5th to G. Now all that is parallel harmonies. Okay, say you had a G major scale and you were going to harmonize it using the relative thirds to each degree. Here's what you'd come up with. Some of them are major, some are minor. Unlike that, a parallel harmony, pretty much how it sounds, kind of like self-described, I guess, is it stays the same. In other words, like that, or major 6, it never changes, etc. So that was just to add a little bit of flavor. Okay, now I'm going to show you a great exercise, especially for the left hand. And I'll demonstrate now the 3-tempo thing that I talk about in a lot of my tapes. And that's if you're into really developing your technique, do something kind of slow. You want to start slow, end up fast, so I guess the middle speed would be half fast. Anyway, so we're going to start with a slow speed. It's a great left-hand exercise, and it's good for your right-hand endurance also. We're going to start off, I'm not going to go up to my top tempo or anything, but we'll start out just for reference sake at 100 beats per minute. Okay, here's the formula. You're just doing 4 notes per string, kind of like the 4x4 exercise that everybody already knows. But the sequence is up 3, then go back 1 and start on the second. Down. Phrase it in triplet. Etc. Now, just for the sake of me demonstrating the 3-tempo thing, let's go to 1:15, a little bit harder. And now for a 3rd tempo, say up to 1:30. And by the way, do all these longer. I'm just abbreviating the heck out of these. In other words, I would normally do each one for like at least 30 seconds, maybe even a minute at each tempo. Etc. Okay, now that we've done that, Angelo and I are going to do a little speed metal type thing. It's very short, but what it's going to show you is, well, I'll tell you what, we'll go ahead and do that and do some video weirdness along with it. Then I'll come back and dissect the pattern, show you where we're operating, what mode, which is a different mode that we've touched on so far, and I'll explain exactly the fingering. Okay, first let me show you the mode that we were operating out of. No telling what mode. The state of mind. Okay, we were playing out of F sharp Phrygian. Phrygian is the 3rd church mode. It's a minor type scale, and it has a minor second, minor or flatted second. Check it out. Root, flatted second, minor 3rd, 4th, 5th, minor 6th, minor 7th. So obviously, you know, it's that minor second that gives it its characteristic. Okay, what we did was, okay, a pivot note or pedal tone. If you don't know what that is, that's where you have one note that's kind of constant and other things that are moving, and you keep alternating between the two. For example, and by the way, here's the feel. Typical gallop, speed metal type thing. Well, okay. That's the first portion. As you can see, I'm going back and forth. Okay, then the second part. Now, the third and fourth parts are just repeats of that. Now, the late that we do at the end slightly leaves Phrygian. We go to Aeolian. Okay, one more mode for you. Pure minor. You probably already know it, and it's the 6th church mode, pure minor. So we've got root, not of minor second, a regular second, minor 3rd, 4th, 5th, minor 6th, minor 7th. So all we did, once again, back to a very linear type approach, right up and down the first 5 degrees. Then a double stop. That's just 12th fret and then 11th fret on the A and D. Then over to B, B minor. Anyway, maybe we can get a deal on shrapnel or something. Anyway, oops. Okay, now let's move to a whole different technique. Not tapping. Tapping's next. Harmonics. I'm going to show you some, first we're going to start with some real simple natural harmonics. Okay, I didn't think about key signature, scale, theory, or anything when I came up with this, and it's certainly nothing brilliant by any means, but it was kind of interesting, and I'm going to use kind of a little slapback delay on it. Okay, also, I didn't do it then, but normally what I'll do if I'm really trying to accentuate harmonics is go to the rear pickup. As you can see, especially on the carbon, it kind of accentuates really weird harmonics that otherwise are normally very hard to get to really come out. Okay, what I did there was look at the neck, once again, geometrically. The frets are 5, 4, 5, 4, then invert it, 5, 4, 5, 4. String sequence, pretty obvious, E, A, D, G, and reverse, G, D, A, E. Now then I moved it up to 7 and 5. Then back down to here. You can also, that's another way to do vibrato with harmonics. Okay, now here's the trick for making a pattern like that effective, in my opinion. You don't want to kill each previous harmonic as you're playing the next one. You don't want that. You want to leave them ringing, which creates that harmony, that harmonic type. Actually, that's dissonant. But that's the essence of harmony, is more than one note, obviously, so you want to let the notes ring out. Okay, now, let's go and do, as you see on the tablature coming up, I'm going to show you not the melody I'm going to do, but just the chords. This is a way to do some triads using natural harmonics. Once again, back on the rear pickup. Okay, the first one is over frets 5, 5, and 5 on the A, D, and G. Then 5, 4, and 7. Okay, here's what you're hearing harmonically. That's just like a D suspended. Okay, a suspended fourth chord is a 3-note chord. You got a root, forget the third, you got a fourth, and a perfect fifth. Now, second inversion, which for theory's sake, is where the middle note is the root, and the fifth is below, and then the fourth is up on top. You know, U2, The Who, Tommy, whatever. Very common progression. Now, let's make a melody out of that. Well, to begin with, let me point out that's a D suspended fourth, and then a D major, so it's resolved. Resolved just means lowering the fourth to a third, so you got a major triad. Although the harmonics don't spell out that exact inversion. This is what I call a weirded out inversion. Because you got the root up here, major third, and the fifth. Okay. Now, to make a melody out of that, oh yeah, that's D sus, D resolved. Now, move it over to these 3 strings, and you have, which is A sus, A resolved, or A major. Take a melody. All I'm doing is 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5, 4, 7. You can move it over. Okay, now I'm going to add a little bit of reverb. And that's a false harmonic, which we're going to touch on in just about 5 minutes. Okay, no, we're going to do it right now. I'm going to show you a pattern that the harmonics that I just showed you, we can actually do kind of make it into more of a musical statement with this. This is going to be with the drum thing. And here we go. I'm going to also incorporate the Kaler. Okay, all I did was use kind of like two-note versions of the chords we just spelled out. 5 and 5, 4 and 7, over to A, 5, 5, 4 and 7. Then I went on and did the same thing in E, using these two strings, which still imply the same chords. 5 and 5, 4 and 7. And then okay, now let's talk about false harmonics. Okay, God, it would take a long time to get into the whole theory behind this, but briefly, okay, harmonics, say the 12th fret harmonic is arrived at, that's actually, if you want to look at it mathematically, that's half the distance between the nut and the string, or the bridge. Now, so when you're doing a false harmonic, all you're doing is a very similar thing, except in this case, we're doing some real magic. Your finger is taking the place of your nut, which is a real good trick. And okay, false harmonics. Once again, you can get into the math of it, but let me point out this. First, the chords that we're doing. We're implying a C major type tonality. Root, octave, and a tenth, which is a major third, an octave high. Move it down, B flat, up to D, back to C. Now, first we're hitting that second set of harmonics, if you will, cutting the string in half, so you're getting the octave. Now, these are easy to find because they fall over the fretboard. One octave up from that fretted note, it's going to be right there. And of course, you've got a track. In other words, whatever the shape of your chord or whatever is down here, obviously you have to follow it up here. Now, first find those. Once again, these are pretty easy. Now, for that other set of harmonics, okay, what I'm using is the set of harmonics that produces a fifth to the fretted note. Okay, let's go back to the open string. If you hit the 5th or 7th fret, you've got that note, a perfect fifth to there. So now what we're looking at is the harmonic producing the perfect fifth to the fretted note. That's what I've done. Now, if you want to look at it harmonically and theoretically, so now look at the shape or the notes you're producing. Root, major 7th and a 5th, which is a beautiful chord, a major 7th chord. Now, the only way to find and get good and proficient at finding false harmonics that fall off the fingerboard are to use pickups or other things as landmarks. In other words, just repetition. Find it and just keep doing it over and over. And after a while, it's logged into memory banks. And then, of course, you have to, track, just like et cetera, with the left hand. Whatever that hand does, this hand has to follow. Of course, the math of it gets kind of weird because you may move this hand 2 frets or say an inch, and this hand will move a half an inch because it's mathematically got to be proportionate. And if that doesn't make any sense, don't even worry about it. But the bottom line is, you can just find them and then memorize them, and then you get to use them. Okay, now I'm going to move to the some tapping stuff. Now, most everybody knows how to, I'm going to go back to the combination of both pickups. Most everybody can do. Simple triad stuff. On my first Hot Licks video, we did some triplet stuff, 3-note arpeggios, triads, whatever. Okay, now let's explore something that's a little bit faster, and what's better, right? I'm just kidding. Okay, so as not to isolate anybody, what I'm going to do is a pattern in E flat. Now we're going to go all the way up. E flat major is the tonality we're producing. I'm going to go on up to the octave. But instead of triplets like we were doing a minute ago, this is going to really facilitate, or lend itself rather, okay, what's going on there is we're in E flat, and this lends itself to 16ths because you've got 4 notes. It's a 4-note pattern. Watch. Tap, pull off to the lowest note. Hammer on, hammer on. So you're doing an ascending. Okay, let's look at it theoretically. E flat, a second, that's a root, a second, and a major third, and that's a fourth. So we're basically playing out of an E flat major type tonality. Keep doing this. Then go over, do it on every string. Now some people push down, some people pull up, push me, pull you, whatever. Whatever works, really. For different patterns or whatever, I kind of vary or alternate. So do it on all 4 strings. This is just as an exercise, etc., etc. Now do a descending formation. Let's see. That's a commercial or something, I think. Anyway, go all the way down. Same thing on the other strings. Now, let's make it a little bit more interesting. Let's take it and move it up. So we've got some movement here. Okay, that's that major scale that I was talking about a few minutes ago. Perfect E flat major. 4th, 5th, 6th, major 7th. Okay, now do the same thing except with the descending sequence. Now let's make things real interesting. This is where it starts sounding more like a sequencer, and it's real simple. Here's what we're doing. We're alternating, ascending, descending, up, down, up, down. Fooled you. Okay, now let me say this about that. Now that we've gotten that together, and of course, you know, practicing different keys, experiment, go out of a minor tonality. You guys are experienced, so you know how to do that. I don't have to spell every interval out. Now, let's do more of a 2-note thing. 2 notes, 2 strings, 2 fingers, 2-handed tapping, too much. Okay, and this is going to spell out more chordal type things. By the way, I've done this on 1 or 2 of my audio tapes, so if you guys have that, don't feel cheated, because I think it warrants repeating. Because you can actually, after you've learned this, you can take it a million directions just by trying different shapes. Okay, what's going on is, obviously, here's the basic movement. That's finger for that string, that one for that. Pull-ups are easier on this. So anchor your thumb. That's going to be real important. Here's the chordal shapes. And obviously, we're moving down with the left hand, up with the right hand, then in reverse. Here's the positions. Change the left hand. Now down 2 frets with the left, up 1 with the right. Down 1 fret, up 2. Then down 2, up 2. Just go back in the exact sequence. Now we're going to change things around. You end up there back with that original D major tonality, but we're going to vary it. Minor. See where we've dropped that 3rd? Replace it with 4th. Then extend the pattern on over to the A string. And then strum or stroke. Now, what you'll notice is I'm fretting this, then I'm opening the D string up, fretting there, plug the E, reach like this to your hip shot, reach and breathe, and reach. Anyway, and that further enhances the D tonality. And that's it. Oh yeah, the other part in slow-mo. Okay, now I'm going to do a four-note thing. I consider this to be more of a Stuart Hamm type, pianistic type approach, and he's kind of a pianistic type guy. Phenomenal tapper, obviously, and very revolutionary in his approach. Now, instead of doing any pull-offs or hammer-ons like this, every note is being done with either a left or right-handed tap, or hammer-on if you want to call it that, but not from like a lower fret. Let me put this in time. I'll just do it to a click, and you'll see what I'm talking about. This is a real easy way of getting some real cool chordal stuff. And once again, just by trying new shapes and things, you can come up with a lot of original ideas real easily. Let's take this up to about... Okay, what's going on? Let's look at the sequence. First, this finger there, this finger there. You can use either 1 and 3 if you got big, strong hands, which I don't. So I use 1 and 4. The string sequence is G, D, then E, A. So the first thing to master here, and use a click. It really helps you because you need to get these things even, 16ths. I must add some movement. See the frets, then add some tension. Talk to your mother-in-law. So, no, add tension by moving your left hand down a whole step. Then repeat the exact same thing with the right hand. Then move back up to finalize it. Okay, now what I'm going to do is a lot of fun, and this is going to be as much learning for me as it is you. I'm sure most of you guys have heard of Wally Voss, super bass player. He did a lot of stuff with Mike Varney and different Varney artists, including Yngwie Malmsteen. He also worked with Tony McAlpine, and has done work, including an album with Joey Tafoya. And so what I'm going to do is bring Wally in, if I can find my friend or brother Wally. And he's going to show both you and me one of his pet licks. So if I can round him up, by the way, he's got a pretty nifty t-shirt on, but let me see if I can find him. All right, we found Wally. He was down the street having lunch with Lumpy. Anyway, he's going to do a tapping thing for you and for me. Why don't you spin around here? I want to check this out too. And just go ahead and lay it on me. Seems like we're just about out of time now. No. Okay, well, slow it down so that us human individuals can understand what's going on.
This is a triplet feel, and this is basically, it's just you can see it's an E power chord with a third on top, which is a 10th, and you play it as triplets, so across the strings and back. Down to D, down to C, and then B. And then
that part. Show me those two notes once more.
The last part?
Yeah.
The last part is just a variation on the B. When I get here, I just repeat 3 notes instead of all 4.
Got it.
Okay, and then the second time around, I do the whole pattern. Every other time, instead of doing the third, I do the 5th.
Yeah, like I said, we're definitely running out of time here. All right, we're going to take a short break. I'm going to come back after I've destroyed Wally, and we're going to get into some chords. And by the way, did any of you guys want to buy some basses? Because I think I'm going to sell some right after the video. We'll take a break, be right back. Let's go see Eddie.
Yeah.
Oh, you're back. Okay, now that Wally's gone, I'm going to do some chordal stuff. Now, the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to show you two different approaches. The first one is where we're going to be strumming. So in a rigid but loose manner, if that makes any sense, we're going to be using the first finger in a very deliberate down and up strokes. Check out the pattern. This is going to be at like 175. Okay, here's what's going on. Simple triad things going on down here to begin with. Just two different chord shapes. The beginning, and you should know this from earlier in the tape, the first thing I'm doing is just a second inversion major triad. Root in the middle, major third up top, fifth below. You can figure out what chords are going on, so I won't spell that out. Starts with the G. Okay, now the next position is where we change our fingering. We go to this. It's a 5 chord. You got a root, a fifth, and a fifth double below. Then go back to the first position, or the first fingering. Then here. Then that resolves very well to a D. Then modulate the whole pattern up one whole step, so we're starting on the 7th fret. Now, pay attention to this. You want to stroke real deliberate. You want to really articulate. Now, what I'm doing timing-wise, even though I'm only doing 3 strokes or strums on each chord to begin with, these are not in triplet, and I think that's important. A lot of people don't realize that you can phrase a 3-note thing, but it doesn't have to be in triplet, and a triplet doesn't have to be 3 notes, and vice versa, etc. So this is actually, I had the tempo up around 175. If you treat that as the quarter note, then you're going to find out that this is actually just eighth notes to that. But here's what I was doing. 3 notes, or 3 times. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 1, then modulate. Now, when we get to the last part, obviously you're only doing the A, D, and G string too. So either with the left hand mute it, or mute it with the right hand, or just pay attention to what you're stroking with your first index finger over here. Now, and only on the last one, can you play the open E string, as I just did. Okay, now let's arpeggiate. Once again, that's just playing a chord 1 note at a time, as opposed to like strumming, like we were just doing. Okay, I got a little bit of flanging going on here. And, well, let me play it for you. Okay, all I'm doing, we're using like a few years ago when I was lucky enough to get spotlighted by Varney, he said something about, I used something similar to this, and he said something about classical type chord arpeggiation, which a lot of people ask me about, and it's very simple. It's just stuff like that. Okay, the bottom line here is, let me point out the chord that I'm playing, an E5 over 2 octaves. E5, E5. Now, I'm doing it in triplet with the right hand, but first let's progress as far as what chords are being produced with the left hand. Move that down so you're playing E sus. E major, or resolve, back up to E sus. Down to D, same formula. C, B. And you can see that that B major, B sus, resolves real well to an E. Okay, what I did at the end, just tapped false harmonics. That's how you execute them, 1 octave up, just like we talked about earlier, same theory. Now I activated the low E, and then got a major third harmonic to that. which is the same as if you do it over the 4th fret. Okay, let's look at the right hand. All we're doing is like classical type arpeggiation. Keep it in triplet. You can see exactly what's going on. Thumb, downstroke, up, up, then a rake. And there you have it. Okay, now let's go to the slap technique. First thing I'm going to show you is the 16th note pattern, which is a great groove, slash exercise, slash solo piece, etc., etc. You can take it a million different directions. I'll show you the basics of it, then we'll go through some variations, or at least one. Okay, I'm going to stay with a click. This will be at 140, and you'll see exactly what's happening. Obviously, all 16 notes are covered by something, either a thumped note, a hammer-on, a muted thump, or a left-hand pat, just onto the neck. Okay, here's the first 4. The next 3. The next 4. And the last 5. Take them a bit at a time. Glue them together, here's what you got. You can see exactly what's going on. Okay, now, let me go ahead and do that with a pattern again, or just a click, and what I'll do is just throw a little variation in there. Okay, all that is a variation of the now famous Orlando lick. Check it out. We're going to use not the muted version, but a fretted version. Doing a major 10th. You got a root down here and a 10th, which is a major 3rd, an octave up. You got plenty of spread there, so it doesn't get muddy. Move it up to an A major, then to a C, then to a D. So check it out. Harmonically and melodically, you have something, as opposed to just. But let me show you the rhythmic formula. Thump, hammer on to a fretted note, then another thump on that same fretted note, then the pluck. Okay, I'm going to slow the pattern down. You'll see the tablature come up. We'll walk through it. Let me slow that down a bit more. Okay, now let's go to a different key, A minor. There's a whole different feel too. I'm going to turn this around to like a triplet type feel, kind of a swing feel, which is not indicative of most slap patterns. And this, once again, to give credit where it's due, I got from Wizard, who was a great bass player in a great group called Mother's Finest. They're legendary in the Southeast, a funk rock group, and I think they're in LA now. And I kind of stole this from a song that they did a long time ago called Disco This Way, or Disco This Way, Disco That Way, something like that. Anyway, the variation's mine, but the basic groove is Wizard's. Okay, having said that, okay, what's going on is this, and I think I might have slipped up on the first time through, but I'll correct it. Here's the basic groove. Okay, what we've got there is, it's in triplet, so keep that in mind. And I'm going to slow this down for you after I dissect the pattern. So the first three notes, you got a thumped pull-off, which is kind of different for this style, followed by a muted thump. Then you got a pluck, muted thump, open pluck. Okay, now here's the variations. This goes back to some real simple stuff. It comes out, you can make it real fast, which sounds more complex, I suppose. Thumped hammer-on followed by a muted thump. This is on the A string. Plucked hammer-on followed by a muted note. That was obviously on the D string. Now, back to the original. Then a two-note pluck. 5 and 5 on the D and G. So that would sound. The second variation, you go back to the groove, then the second set of triplets is. Okay, what's going on there is, the formula is a muted thump followed by a fretted pluck. Don't fret. And the positions are, but you have to like phrase it in triplet, even though it's like a. Okay, here's the pattern. I'll do it real slow, and then you walk through it yourself. Let's see, I'm going to slow this way down. Okay, now let's do one last thing. This is going to wrap up the video. This is, I mentioned Victor Wooten earlier. He's phenomenal at the double thumping. A whole separate approach. You're not thumping down through like that, and you're not bouncing off. What you're doing is going down in between the strings. The underlying principle, the basics of it, are using your thumb just like a pick, alternate picking. So as an exercise, you could do this. Do it on each string. Practice changing strings. Try and make sure that you do it evenly, and also that the upstroke also gets as much value. You can hear it. You know, it gets the same kind of attack, although it's obviously not going to sound the exact same. If you have a fingernail, sometimes that can benefit that second note. Okay, now I'm going to do a pattern. I'm going to use a separate effect here, which I think is pretty nifty. That okay, this is going to be at the key of D Dorian, and I'll do the pattern and I'll dissect exactly where every note's coming from. Once again, just keep in mind that type thing. This is we'll start this at 150, then we'll slow it down. Okay, what's going on? Once again, think 16th notes. The left hand is going to dictate which notes are fretted or muted, where you get that type of effect, or hammer on. So the first thing to do is try getting the hammer on, and then the muted notes. Okay, here's the positions. Let's zero in on the left hand. Repeat. Go on up. Okay, I'll go ahead and do this pattern slow, and then you ought to be able to follow along. I'll slow this down pretty noticeably. because if you're not used to this thing, it's real awkward at first, but the technique develops real quick. Okay, that's going to wrap the video up. Hopefully I've given you a bunch of new ideas. We've covered a lot of material today, a lot of different techniques, and hopefully I've given you some new theory that you weren't familiar with before, because all this stuff comes into play, I think, as far as being a good player. I want to talk about a couple of things before I split. Mainly one thing, and this is kind of like just from one player to another, or maybe more basic than that, one person to another. Not to sound too much like a parent or an L7. If you don't know what an L7 is, picture that and that, stick them together. Bingo. I've had a couple of friends, close friends and or acquaintances, that have gone right down the tubes with crack. And even though there's no halos over my head, I can assure you I haven't done this, fortunately, because it's obviously a very addictive drug, and that's why I want to really take a look at this thing. Look statistically at what's going on with crack right now. 1 out of 3 people that try it become addicted. And out of the addicts, 1 out of 10 enjoy long-term recovery. Now that ought to scare you. That's, you know, that's facts. That's not like an opinion of mine. In the meantime, you can ruin a lot of stuff. You know, you can ruin family, relative relationships, spousal, friends, everything. You can ruin your bank account. I've seen people go through money, cars, equipment, bases, keyboards, whatever. In pursuit of this drug, I've seen other people do things I really can't even say on the video here. It's pretty degrading. But the bottom line here is this is something you want to steer clear of. It's going to take its toll on you physically. You're going to lose weight, and ultimately you can die from it. And if you want to look at the legalities of it, you know, you can go to jail for use, possession, and of course if you're dealing it. Now if you combine that along with all the I'll go on and say it, diseases and even other type of criminal activities that surround this whole drug culture, especially crack, and I think you'll see that it's really something you want to avoid. And so instead of trying it, which is basically like saying, well, I'll do it, and if I like it, I'll do it again, which, you know, you ought to view crack as like a road with a big dead end sign. I mean, if you know it's a dead end and you know you need to get to the mall, you don't take that road, right? That might be a poor analogy, but the bottom line is, like I said, I've seen some people waste right away with this stuff. And so one person to another, don't throw away your career and your base and all that, stay away from it. Okay, once again, I hope you've gotten something from the video. And I'm Beaver Felton. I'm going to wrap it up now. I'm going to close with a solo with some other techniques. And I'll see you on another video, hopefully with Wally Voss again. Also, I want to request that Angelo Giannotti come back on my next video. And if not there, I'll see you maybe at the next NAMM show. Come to the Hip Shot booth or the ART booth or maybe the Carvin booth or whatever. I'm Beaver Felton for SuperChops for Bass. See you on the next one.